are going to take a lot of resources from Mother Earth. So am I being conscious of what I'm taking out from that space? And that's the first step to moving to being, a sensible architect. So that's one of the core values of our architectural practice. So today, a material has become a very interesting palette for me to work with. And it can change qualities the way you want it to work. So you have this, as I earlier said, that romanticism with that material. Nature, light, material are all characters of the story. And as an architect, you weave that story interestingly. So I'll be happy if by the end of my life, if I can create a building which can kill itself after its life and becomes a product for something else. Designers as a profession are going to enter the boardrooms of every corporate in the near future. What we are trying to do with Hampi Center of Design is to understand design and nature in our nature-inspired design workshops.
Our aspirations as mankind is growing. We have begun to question ourselves and are trying to delve deep within, to understand ourselves and to grow. We want to operate out of a deep sense of purpose. We have realized that humans can alter their lives by altering the attitudes of mind. Here's an attempt to connect, share, get some of the successful people to open up and in the process learn and find the best within us. An attempt to delve into their minds, thought process and attitudes. How they think, feel, operate, and what are the habits that make them who they are. In the process, accept ourselves with all our insecurities, vulnerabilities, fears, and work towards transforming ourselves and in making ourselves our better version for today and tomorrow. I'm Satish Rao. I'm a vlogger, abundance crusader, and I'm passionate about bringing in abundance in all areas of our lives. So Chetan, tell me, is design only for architects and for designers, or is it meant for others? And what does Hampi Center for Design do in terms of involving other people and other professionals in this?
Right. No, I think design is a field which is going to get into all realms of our life. Is already there. I mean, right from the way we use a pencil to the way we discuss processes in a company. So I think design is already a part of everybody's life, quite ingrained into their lives. But I think designers as a profession are going to enter the boardrooms of every corporate in the near future, are going to enter into the boardrooms of finance managers, are going to enter into the realm of thought processes. One big example is Apple, where design has entered into that
entire organization.
That's the soul of that whole organization. I see that happening throughout. I see that happening even in a company which is going to be one employee to a company which has so many multi groups of activities. So I think design and what we are trying to do with Hampi Center of Design is to understand design and nature in our nature-inspired design workshops. As I was sharing with you earlier about our recent workshop, I would just want to share this thought that we had somebody who came and said, can we design how to decompose half-burned dead bodies in the Ganges at a much faster rate and keep Ganges clean? We had somebody who worked on that thought process to somebody who said, can I create a process in my company on how to organize finances by looking at ants? Right? So if you really look at the diversity of design thoughts, from a product design to a thought design, and they were all approached in the same workshop, in the same dialogue center, right? So I think somewhere Hampi Center of Design is trying to look at that exploration. Again, going back to one of our thoughts which we want to do at Hampi Center of Design is put up a space where research is encouraged. So we intend to have a few design chairs which will work purely on certain level of research. The way we are looking at it right now is, say for example, we have an artist called Arun Desai in Bangalore who is into paper folding. It's a simple craft of origami or kirigami or whatever, of folding paper. But the moment we had a workshop with him in a design studio, and we said, can I design large span structures using concepts of paper? Can I design foldable spacecrafts? Can I design nanotubes of foldable material which can be injected into the body and goes back and becomes a stunt for the heart? So you suddenly have a simple act of paper folding going into architectural design, going into medicine, and going into space exploration. So we are trying to see whether we can create those design chairs which starts exploring these thought processes. So we're working on nature-inspired design, we're working on paper folding at this point of time. We are looking at futuristic design thoughts as some of the ideas which we are working with the Hampi Center of Design. They're all thoughts, they're all activities which have started off at a very minuscule level.
Yeah.
And I am sure that in the coming years, this can become huge line of thinking and could become verticals of their own in the coming years.
Yeah.
Similarly, we are looking at India itself, our country, so much of stories, so much of impact from various aspects of our daily life. Could be stories of the village. We've been a very verbal evolution. We have told stories from one generation to another generation to another generation, and that is carried forward. There's somewhere, thanks to technology, we're missing that out.
Yeah.
So can we create museum spaces which could talk about those stories? Right? So we want to have a course in our Hampi Center of Design on how do you tell stories using exhibitions.
Right.
So we want to create a program where you train people to design how to tell a story through architecture, through display systems, through things like that. Because there's so many stories, in our daily life. So you go to the village, you'll find so many stories.
Yeah.
Their festivals have so many stories. Their dresses have so many stories.
Yeah.
Each motive in their dress, each motive in their wearing has a different story to tell. So how do you tell that story? We're all losing it out. Yeah. And we're all coming back to a nice t-shirt and a jeans pant culture, which is losing out those stories.
Yeah.
I'm just giving an example there.
Very true.
So we're trying to see whether we can create somebody who can tell those stories. Train people on that.
So any live examples of people who attended this workshop and from some other fields or diverse fields, and how have they had breakthroughs in their thinking?
Okay, there was this person in our last workshop who is a chemical engineer who said, can I put a shower gel which is much more comfortable for
health reasons for the skin
than a soap bar. Mm-hmm. Can I put it in a soap bar? So in the process of discussion, we came out, we went into a nature inquiry and found that certain fishes or frogs allow water to move only in one direction and not in the other direction. So from a product of converting a soap gel to a soap bar, it went into designing a container which can hold the soap gel and work like a soap bar.
Wow.
Right? Very, very different approach. But where did that inspiration come from? It came from a fish.
Nature, fish.
It came from a frog. So you had people like that. We had a Montessori teacher who came up and said, how do I understand how animals train their cubs or calves to do certain activities?
Yeah.
And is it possible for me to really look at that as a parenting technique for human beings also? I think we are now driven, if I'm talking to, and if a couple is talking to each other and their kid comes and tries to disturb them, the easiest distraction is giving them a mobile phone and Is it possible for us to change from looking at how animals distract their kids? Simple thing like that. So we had a Montessori teacher who came and studied that. We've had, we all know now is the age of driverless vehicles. And there are people who are researching the way bats move around, the way honeybees communicate with each other, the way ants communicate with each other, and trying to see whether that can be introduced into a design. One more big example of nature-inspired design has been even our bullet trains in Japan, which has a long nose, taken from a kingfisher. Because when the kingfisher moves from one density with air into water, the beak does not create any ripples. It easily transfers itself into that water and then finds its fish and catches it and comes back. The earlier bullet trains had a snout. So whenever it went into a tunnel, it went into a thicker density of air, and thereby it created something called a sonic boom. And it kind of not just created sound, it kind of reduced the speed of the vehicle. So they looked at this kingfisher and converted it into the face of the bullet train, and voila, today we have the cumulative time delay of all bullet trains across Japan to be 6 seconds. It's amazing, thanks to nature. So that inquiry is getting into that process here. So many verticals of looking at design through nature, off nature. Today we are talking about materials which can, which we have not even seen before. Very new age materials which could increase, the lifespan of that material and reduce the resources from Mother Earth. Say for example, I'll just give you a case study of a laptop which we carry. A laptop just is around 3.5 kgs of weight. But to manufacture that laptop, the amount of resources we take out from Mother Earth is close to around 15,000 kgs. And every time you change a laptop, you dispose the laptop and buy another new laptop, you're buying another 15,000 kgs of resources from Mother Earth. Today we are in a major challenge that, I don't know if you've heard of Earth Overshoot Day. It's the day when we have finished our resources for this particular year and start consuming resources from the future generations. It started off somewhere in late 1980s where we started overshooting. That means that before December 31st, we have started consuming resources that year. And we started borrowing. Today we are on August 1st. By August 1st, we have consumed resources available on Earth for this generation before August 1st. And from August 1st till December 31st, what we consume belongs to another generation. So why are we cheating the next generations of whatever we are trying to, for our comfort levels? Yeah. So can design get into a mode where it is not a product, it's not a problem of the consumer, it's a problem of the designer.
Right.
Can I redesign spaces where I need to consume much lesser and I delay this process? Can I start moving instead of August 31st to July 31st? Can I move to September 31st, to November 31st? Thereby delaying that process of the Earth Overshoot Day.
Right.
And sustain for a longer time. We're not going to save Earth.
Yeah.
Earth will continue to live in its own form.
Yeah.
It might change into a water body, a complete water body.
Yeah.
It is only that we need to be saved from extinction. Can we delay that process of extinction? So, yeah, design is one way of approaching that. I think that's the top of the thought process which needs to come in, and the way how do we redesign so that we can continue living for a longer time as a species.
Very nice. So Chetan, somewhere you mentioned that aspect of that 5 elements of the hierarchy of evolution of a product. I want to get more details on that. What are you saying?
Yeah, this nature-inspired design thinking is an offshoot of what I think was a very interesting thought process which came out of Stanford, if I'm right, of the 5 stages of design thinking processes, which has now been a very important training session for most of the corporates. Design thinking goes into being empathized about that problem you're trying to solve, then defining the problem you want to solve, and then ideate on that problem, and create a prototype and then test it. These are the 5 elements of design thinking. At this inquiry which we are trying to do now based on nature-inspired design thinking, which can literally get into all boardrooms, is you empathize on what the problem is. You dwell on the on the problem for a longer time, and you say, what is my problem? And once you state what is my problem, how can I solve this particular problem, then you go into a sense of nature inquiry and say, how does nature solve a similar problem? Say, for example, if I say, how can I safeguard cyclists from head injury? I can't put the same question in terms of saying, how can nature help cyclists from head injury? That's a wrong question. So you kind of redefine that question with a nature inquiry. You start looking at how nature would put that same question. You generate a series of questions out of that. So you get into a nature inquiry. Then you create some kind of a design matrix where you start looking at different species have approached similar problems and solved similar problems. And so from there, you start looking at those inspirations and then coming out with your own design ideations. And then you prototype and test it and then put it out in the market. So this nature-inspired design is an elongated version of the design thinking process, but I feel is the much stronger need of today's world, where we are already overshooting before August 31st our resources.
Very nice. And so coming to another important aspect is that you as a senior architect and been on this journey pretty long, what would be your message to young designers and architects?
Tread lightly. Be conscious of everything you work with. I'm not saying you need to be eco-friendly, but you need to be conscious.
Right.
That's the first aspect. I think the second aspect is to really think out of the box. Expand your boundaries as much as possible, because that's when new thoughts happen. New explorations happen. So when you do tread lightly and also expand your horizons, you're going to do something which is very nice for designers, very nice for the community, and also nice for the ecosystem in which we live, the Earth. Even if we go into Mars in the coming years, can we tread lightly even on Mars? Can we start treading lightly even on Mars?
Yeah.
Let's not create it like what WALL-E, the movie, showcases humans as a civilization which has generated so much of waste that humans itself can't stay on Earth. They move into a spaceship.
True. Very true. Yeah, very nice, very powerful. So, Chetan, now I'll come to some other aspect. What are the other interests that you have? I think you have other varied interests also in your life. What are the things that you are passionate about?
I don't know. Yeah, I think theatre is something which interests me. I've been an Yakshagana dancer earlier.
Oh.
I have a family of dancers. My wife is a Kathak and a Bharatanatyam dancer. My sons also perform Kathak. Used to perform Kathak. So. Yeah, theatre, dance, art forms are something which excite me. Movies is another thing which really gives me another perspective of life. So we've recently started off talking to kids, started a small film club at Hampi for children and one for adults. So we just sit, watch movies, dialogue on that, learn from that. I've been an avid traveler, as I said. So I started organizing tours for architects. So we started going out on tours of architects with architects and students of architecture together to see some master architects work. And that was my biggest learning, because after the tour, in the evenings when you sat down in your hotel, each person has his own perspective of how we saw that particular space. Somebody would have seen a small detail. Somebody would have seen the whole space value. So when you start dialoguing on each one's perspective of that thing, the next day's visit would be much more interesting. So I travel a lot. So we did a lot of travels with architects, fellow architects. That's something which I want to get back to.
Yes.
Traveling with architects to see different architects' works.
Very interesting.
So these are some of the things which we.
So how does your normal day in Hampi now? Now that I shifted to Hampi, shifted based on Hampi, how does it look like for you?
Mornings we do an hour and a half of yoga, and then we sit down on what we need to do for that whole day. But yeah, we would have planned out for the whole week. So that day, activity gets sorted out. And staying in Hampi has its own beautiful things. Evenings are generally spent at the riverside, having a bhaji and tea and dialoguing with various people.
The locals singing.
Which is not possible in Bangalore. I do generally have certain days of site visits, and we travel across because we're doing projects. At Hampi, we're doing projects up to Gulbarga, and in Bangalore, we're doing projects up till Tirupati. So whenever I'm in Hampi, a couple of days are spent on site visits and travel and other things. But the office setup is so organized, the process is so organized that my presence is required only at the ideation stage, and the process takes over the other aspects of the practice. So, except for certain important site visits, I am involved. Otherwise, a lot of time spent on ideating on what we are working with Hampi, and generally every week we would have some workshop or the other. So that's how I spend my days.
Very nice, very interesting. So Chetan, thank you for the time you spent, and thank you for being this beacon of light where you're trying to bring in this element of design and trying to see how we can permeate it into all areas of our lives, and especially professionals, giving them that perspective and giving them the exposure and sharing your knowledge and getting a platform for people to share and to learn. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I think I'll also use this opportunity to say the first spirit was lit by both my parents, who kind of who didn't stop me from exploring what I wanted to explore. I think that's where it started off, and that's what is taking me till now. And thanks to both of them for triggering this also. Thank you.
Thank you, Chetan.
Thank you, sir.
All the best to you.
Pleasure.